It's difficult doing one of these videos. I always find it hard to talk about this particular subject. For those of you that were subscribed to my previous channel, I had done a video on Sean Taylor's anniversary a couple of years ago. Every couple of years it comes up. And you'd think that over the course of time it would get easier to talk about. I don't think that it does. It's something that gets blown out of proportion. It's something that gets remembered differently by different people. But I think all in all, one of the more common feelings that come out of this situation amongst people who are Redskin fans, there is a common sense of speechlessness. It's hard to talk about things that that affect you the way in which events like this do. Now, those of you that are subscribed to this channel that are not Redskin fans, and I appreciate your guys' viewing my channel and hopping in and taking a look at what's going on over here in the BFG show. And I appreciate you guys doing that. I welcome any and all NFL football fans that are out there, regardless of who it is that you root for. But all that notwithstanding, this particular subject is one that is particularly close to my Redskin brothers and sisters out there. And it may be a little bit difficult for fans outside of the Redskin fan base to truly, really understand what it is the Redskin fan really goes through. And that has been shaped through time and through media influence. I'll go into that a little bit later, but I was not looking forward to doing this topic. It kind of crept up on me before I realized it was 10 years. I don't know where the hell 10 years went. And it's very cliche to sit here and say it feels like yesterday. It feels like yesterday. It doesn't feel like 10 years at all. Most of us will remember exactly what it was we were doing that day. Most of us will remember exactly how it is that we felt. I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what I was doing. I was working at the time when this happened. It happened in the late hours of the night. I just happened to pick up my phone, and mind you, Miami's, I believe, a 3-hour time difference from us here on the West Coast, and so it was very early in the morning when I had heard about it. And the job that I was doing was not a job that it's a very physically intense job, not a job you can necessarily walk away from. Needless to say, BFG walked away from the job, and I knew and understood at that particular time it was going to be hard, it was going to be difficult for people who were not Redskin fans to truly understand what it was that was going on. But I remember jumping out and getting on my phone, trying to get updates, madly refreshing my internet connection to see if there was latest news, and there really wasn't. And I remember getting home early in the morning and just going over the internet, just trying to get information on what was going on. The sad series of events that took place that day and even thereafter are so impactful amongst red-skinned fans that, to tell you the truth, guys, it really is not a topic that a lot of Redskin fans go into with one another, to be honest with you. We don't talk about it seriously. We talk about it in the context of the game. We talk about it. We want to talk about and we want to remember the wonderful things that he represented on this football field for this football team at that particular time in the franchise. We gloat about his highlight reel status. We talk up his ability as a playmaker. But make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, anytime you ever hear anybody talk about this particular subject, regardless of how we were talking about it, deep down inside, there is a part about this subject matter that is extremely impactful. It is extremely difficult. And it is a reminder of the dread, the misery that we had felt at that particular time, and to talk about him in a positive light is to reflect off of that. And that, I think, is just a part of life. That, I think, is normal. Some of us remember Sean Taylor in different contexts. Some of us remember when he was drafted. I go back with this football franchise a long time. I'm in my 40s. I remember the Super Bowl era. I remember the era of lethargy when our owner took over this football team. I remember our propensity to go out and spend our future on over-the-hill, has-been football players that came here to put on this uniform for a paycheck. And the list is long and distinguished. There are tons of these guys that came in with promise, that had Pro Bowl status on their previous teams. They came in here with the promise of rising this team out of the depths that Daniel Snyder put us into. Him and his cronies sitting at the top felt that they were playing fantasy football with this football franchise before fantasy football was even a thing. Bringing these has-been, washed-out football players in here, guys who had never been injured before, would all of a sudden find an injury to ail about and sit on that bench and write out their paychecks. The first $100 million defensive player came here and did nothing for us. Sent this organization into a tailspin, and every single year we gave up money, and every single year we gave up valuable, precious draft picks, would only set this football franchise farther and farther back, and that revolving door at head coach, that revolving door at quarterback kept spinning and spinning and spinning, just like our heads, just like our patience. None of us would have thought at the time to do it the way that a lot of the winning organizations do it. You go to the draft, you draft these guys young, you draft for position, you draft for depth, you draft for the future, and eventually in 2 or 3 to 5 years some of these guys are really, really going to pay off for you. The Hall of Fame is riddled with people they didn't think were going to make it. People that were told they weren't good enough. People that were told they were too small. People that were told that they were too slow. Couldn't tackle, couldn't throw, couldn't catch. But just given a chance in an organization with a really, really good backbone and a really, really good coaching staff and an owner that believes in them and a GM that knows how to pick them, allowing these guys the soil in which to mature and flower and produce. 2004, it was the era of Joe Gibbs too. Bringing him back into the organization and having him show us how it was done, that was the first time that I can recall. I remember saying back then, I would rather lose under Joe Gibbs than win under the auspices of this owner and his cronies below him, because that is not sustained success. That is not how you build a franchise. You might get flashes and glimpses of greatness, but with the philosophy that we had before, it wasn't working. And finally, to bring somebody in who knows how to pick and cultivate talent, we were finally getting that breath of fresh air, that light at the end of the tunnel. And the 2004 draft was the first draft that Joe Gibbs came in here and went to work on this football franchise. And for those of you that remember, he went out and picked up a seemingly has-been quarterback. Put money down on a guy who had very little value. Mark Brunell came out of many, many different organizations. As a quarterback, was a very, very decent quarterback, serviceable quarterback, was seen as a backup to a lot of people, and for the most part he was. But Joe wanted a veteran. Joe wanted somebody who had experience, courage under fire, potential. Even if he was on the last legs of his career, he was willing to take him and actually upped the ante and drove the price up and paid a hell of a lot more for Brunell than what a lot of people would have paid for. But Joe had his man. But Joe and his man alone couldn't do it. He needed to draft other players. And it was very, very obvious going into that 2004 season that Joe Gibbs was more than likely going to find an individual, a target, to help alleviate a lot of that pressure for Brunell to throw to. A lot of people felt that Kellen Winslow Jr. was going to be the first-round draft selection for this franchise. And to tell you the truth, it may not have been a bad pick for us. If you could imagine a Joe Gibbs system with a Winslow and a Brunell as your 1-2 punch, that was very, very, honestly, that made a lot of sense to a lot of people. You take a look at the state of the NFC East back then. You had a lot of quarterback tight end combinations back then that were flourishing. Jason Witten was still around back in those days. He was young, brand new player. Vinny Testaverde was throwing to him, successfully, I might add. You also had other individuals. Some of you might remember Jeremy Shockey. Jeremy Shockey in his early days with Eli Manning was very, very much still of rookie status. That was a combination that was hitting. Kellen Winslow Jr. and Mark Brunell made a lot of sense. But much to our surprise, we went with a safety. Think about the impact of that. For those of us that didn't really watch a whole lot of college football, it didn't make any sense in the world as to why we would take a secondary position, a safety position, not even a lockdown corner, which is what a lot of people were taking in the first round as far as defensive backs were concerned, but a safety of all people, to come in and make an impact on this football team. And a lot of us thought the old man had lost his damn mind. I remember when I first found out that we had drafted Sean Taylor. I didn't watch a whole lot of college football at that time. My college football watching days were behind me. I had grown distasteful of the NCAA product. I had lost my taste for it back in the early 90s. I didn't believe in the bowl system. I didn't believe in the coaches and the AP poll system. I didn't believe in any of that crap. I believe that victories are won and lost in the football field, not in the voter's booth. I still feel that way. But ever since the 90s were over and we ushered in the 2000s, I knew of Miami. I knew of Miami fairly well. I was actually a big Florida State fan, so I actually knew a lot about Miami in regards to the rivalry that exists between the two schools. And I also know that Miami produced some really, really good top-tier talent. And frankly, that was one of the only reasons as to why I didn't completely and absolutely condemn this pick in the first round in 2004. But in the 2004 draft, we selected a safety in Sean Taylor. A kid that, by all means, had the physical attributes to be something special, to be a really, really big target, to be a really, really big influence on this football team. And everything that I was reading about him and everything that I was seeing on highlight film, it looked like he was going to be a fairly decent pick, but still a first-round draft selection at safety. To think about the impact of a pick like that today, think about that today in 2018, if we would have drafted a first-round draft selection at free safety, you know there are going to be pockets of the media that are going to be bashing that pick. Because who takes a safety that high? I had a philosophy back then on rookies, and a lot of you remember what that is, and I won't go into that. I'll probably go into that later on down the road. It's funny how I got to repeat a lot of these videos that were on my previous channel. But that's okay. But that's a video for another time. But I was not high on anybody that came in here as a rookie because I feel that your status needs to be earned here. I believe to wear that burgundy and gold and to earn that number is something that you have to do. Other than that, you're just a body that's easily replaced when you put on the burgundy and gold. In just a very, very short period of time, we got to ride the coattails of Halley's Comet. That was a candle that was burned on both ends, and we didn't realize it at the time. We didn't realize what it was. We didn't realize what was going on as it was going on. We didn't realize the impact that it was going to have until after it was taken from us. It was all gone. But when he first gets in here, it was obvious from preseason that this kid was going to be something special. And throughout his course here, his last remaining years on this planet, he was a Washington Redskin. He grew very, very quickly. And the thing is that the mainstream media had a particular idea of who Sean Taylor was. And there were several people that pointed out his athletic ability and pointed out his star-making capability, but not too many. We were still at that spot back in 2004, 2005, where the media loved to pick on us. The media loved to always throw up that leaderboard of all the revolving door quarterbacks that have come through our organization, all the former coaches that have come through the organization, all the money spent on free agents to come in here that did absolutely nothing for us. The embarrassment of Philadelphia, Washington on Monday night, where Michael Vick ran for Madden-type numbers. Came in here and completely destroyed on a wet, rainy, and cold day that was probably the origin of a lot of different rants from a lot of different media personalities that were out there that kind of set their careers. It was the source of a lot of headache. A lot of these individuals came in here and we had massive prescriptions for pain medication. It was well-deserved because we sucked as a franchise back then. We were absolutely horrible. We needed help. We needed somebody to come in here to make a difference. When you have the physical attributes like a Sean Taylor, eventually your stardom's going to show. And it showed early on. A young man who had the physical attributes. And to name just a few of those physical attributes, just my personal idea of Sean Taylor's physical attributes. He had playmaking ability. Playmaking ability. You asterisk an individual that has playmaking ability. An individual who has playmaking ability is somebody that you draft in the first round, regardless of whether you need that position or not. That's been a concept that's been hard for me to learn and hard for me to understand. It's something I'm growing to understand just in the last couple of years, but I see it now. Playmaking ability, the ability to make things happen on a football field. He was that red circle player, that individual that on defenses you red circle his name because he's somebody that you have to watch out for. He had a long span, man. He had long legs, long arms. Tall kid. Great range. Phenomenal range. And there were so many physical attributes about him that were so contradictory. How can somebody with that kind of wingspan have that kind of speed? For somebody who has a long wingspan, it's a little bit harder for those individuals to get up to speed because they have a longer wingspan. It takes longer for their pedals to get moving. That's why the shorter, explosive individuals are much more impactful. You take a look at some of the shorter guys that we've had on this team. We've had some short receivers with some massive explosive ability. Massive explosive ability. Because they're shorter, their pedals are quicker. Sean had the ability to keep up with individuals like that, which was unheard of for a guy that was as tall and had his span. He had a nose for the football. For those of us that know and for those of us that see his highlight reel, I remember the games he played in. He had a nose for the football. His physicality is the one thing that stood out the most. His ability to hit, his willingness to hit, his willingness to throw his body out there and to really lay the lumber on people. And you know when he carried the football, if you take a look at these highlight reels down below me, he was a kid that prayed for contact. Loved contact. But the most impressive thing that I found, as a former player of the position, as somebody who has expressed knowledge of the position, I was the most impressed with his size. His size was absolutely, I have yet to see. And this is, you can quote me on this. I don't care who you're talking about. You can even throw Cam Chancellor's name in there. I have yet to see a free safety with his size play with his athletic ability. He was built like a linebacker. He could have played linebacker. He was bigger than Sua Cravens. He was a huge hulking kid, especially coming out of Miami. I honestly feel that we kind of made him slim down a little bit to improve his range. But when he wore that number 36 and he came in here, he was a massive dude. He was a big guy. And that size, that range, that speed, you couple that with a nose for the football, the physicality, and the playmaking ability. You've got a superstar on your hands. And it was obvious very early on that he was well on his way to being one of the most memorable safeties in this league. And guys, you take a look at the company that was already in the NFC East in 2004. We had Brian Dawkins that was making highlight reel footage in 2004. We had Roy Williams in this league for the Dallas Cowboys that was making highlight reel footage. And I'll be goddamned if not in his first year here, people were starting to turn their nose in the direction of the Washington Redskins for once. People were taking a look at this franchise saying, who is this number 36? You talk about the Wolverine, one of the more underrated safeties in the league at that particular time, a guy that was extremely physical, a madman on that football field. And then you talk about Captain Horsecollar, an individual who had decent range, great hitting ability, already played on a very good defense, another guy who loved to hit, a guy who frankly would put staples on people in the backfield for Dallas. I've yet to see anybody of Roy Williams' talent since then. All of them did not necessarily come to the physical attributes that Sean Taylor brought to the football field. And it was very obvious. One of the early memories that I remember about him coming into this league was going head-to-head and shaking his fist at the bear. The combination that was Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens. At that particular time in that era, that combination was deadly. Every single week, for those of you that remember, how many of you guys remember every single week we talk about McNabb and Owens? McNabb and Owens. Those guys couldn't have breakfast without us figuring out how many spoonfuls they had before they met their fill. It was everything, those two. And if those two came out in a football game and they were having a bad day, you didn't poke the bear. You let them do what they were going to do. And I'll be goddamn if Sean Taylor didn't come out and poke the bear. Not having a catch at all in the first half in our highlight game, a primetime game against Philadelphia. And Terrell Owens goes to catch an overthrown football out of bounds. And as he's going out of bounds, Sean Taylor blasts him in the face. Gets a flag for a late hit and gets right in the face of Terrell and starts talking smack. And I remember I was so pissed off when he did that. I'm like, why would you want to wake this guy up? Why would you want to fire up Terrell Owens? Why would you want him to go back to the huddle and say, give me the football? We are winning this football game. Their highlight superstar is out of it. Why would you want to wake him up and put him back into it? And that's exactly what he did. He challenged him, drew a line in the sand, said, I dare you to cross it. And Terrell Owens tried. He tried to cross it. He got sent to the locker room shortly thereafter that. He couldn't take it. He took a couple of hits, got his back messed up, went to the locker room. He saw what the youthful exuberance of a superstar, a potential superstar, was going to do. Somebody whose star was shining a little bit brighter at that time, regardless of any of us really wanted to see it. But Sean laid the lumber on him. Sean challenged him, stepped up to the plate, and that was when I sat back and I said, wow. I got pissed off at this kid, and I had no business getting pissed off. He proved to me right then and there that this is a guy that you want a red circle on your football team as a potential superstar for your football franchise. You take a look at the state of the NFC East back then, guys, the Dallas Cowboys. He was coming into really difficult company. Vinny Testaverde, like I said, was quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. You had guys like Keyshawn Johnson and Patrick Creighton and Jason Witten. Incredible passing. And we had a Tony Romo at the team at that time, but Testaverde was the featured individual. Behind him was Drew Bledsoe. And then there was the Tony Romo show. You're talking about two massive veteran guys that know how to win, guys that know how to put the football anywhere that they want to. Give them time. They're going to put it. They're going to send you down range. They're going to move the chains, and they're going to score touchdowns for you. Vinny Testaverde and Drew Bledsoe were those individuals. And they were throwing to the guy. They were throwing to the likes of Keyshawn Johnson, Jason Witten, and Patrick Creighton. I was scared of Patrick Creighton because Patrick Creighton was a massive, massive third down option for that football team. Always caught the football, caught everything that came at him. People like to pay attention to Keyshawn. Keyshawn was a highlight, playmaker. Patrick Creighton was the one that scared me the most on that football team. After that, you had from the New York Giants, you had Eli Manning, you had Amani Toomer on that football team. Phenomenal, phenomenal talent. Great third down guy himself, but the big third down guy was Ike Hilliard. You had David Tyree on that football team, and Jeremy Shockey, of course. Those were two teams, Dallas and New York, that were always vying for the top spots in the NFC East. And, of course, on Philadelphia, Todd Pinkston, some of you guys might remember him, phenomenal talent, but even better than that was the Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens show. Those guys were lighting people up. And from that perspective, it makes sense to take a highlight playmaker in the first round at safety. You want somebody to be able to pick up individuals like that. At the time, the concept was a little bit unheard of. But we did it. We took a gamble on it, and it took a lot of help from individuals on this football team that were already from Miami. Individuals that had played with him, individuals that had seen him, that known him. Yeah, guys like Clinton Portis and Santana Moss were some of the biggest individuals, the biggest support system for bringing in another Miami football player and Sean Taylor into this organization. And he did not come into this organization. That was part of the thing with him, was the media reception of Sean Taylor when he got here. Make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that are a little bit too young to really remember Sean Taylor, but remember more about his passing and more about his highlight reels than you do about actually when he was here and old enough to understand, let me regale you just a little bit about the media reception of a Sean Taylor coming in here. Miami did not have the greatest of reputations when it came to its athletes coming into the NFL. A lot of them had been in trouble. A lot of them had been a little bit unruly. A lot of them had strikes against them as far as law enforcement was concerned. Some of them had their own lawyers, for Christ's sake. These guys did not exactly come in here squeaky clean. You know, they partied as much as they played. They played hard, they worked hard, but they also partied hard, and was very, very well known within those confines of that locker room and that organization that these guys, you were taking a gamble taking players out of Miami. There was a lot of schools back then that were like that, and Miami was definitely at the top, but the reception for a Sean Taylor and bringing him in here was not exactly positive. He immediately got off on the wrong foot with the media because of the rookie symposium. A rookie symposium is not something that is messed with. It is not something that you joke around with. It is not a laughing matter. It is not something you don't take seriously. It is mandatory that you go. You have no option but to go, and it is advisable that you go. It's smart if you go, because that's the league trying to help you out as a young man who doesn't have a whole lot of money, who's suddenly got money thrown at him. And we'd seen through history, the one thing history had taught us, that's a bad combination. There are tons and tons of tragic stories out there of individuals who just didn't know necessarily how to spend their money wisely, and it ended up becoming the bane of their existence. And some of them were in jail, some of them were in prison, some of them were dead. And we started to notice a trend in the league, and the NFL Players Association decided to come up with a rookie symposium and make it mandatory for people to go, to give you a little bit of a better understanding of how to conduct yourself as a millionaire, basically. People were going to take advantage of you, and not everybody was going to hear that message. We were going to make our individuals coming in from the rookie symposium as a rookie to come in and listen to veterans, listen to professionals, tell you exactly how it is that you should conduct yourself for the best trajectory of success. Sean Taylor said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to skip the rookie symposium. I'll take their fine. I'm going back home. That was unheard of. Huge, huge check mark against the Washington Redskins. Not a positive thing. And I'm sorry, you're not going to build a good rapport and a good status with Joe Gibbs when you're doing stuff like this. And I'm telling you, Joe Gibbs kind of talks about it lightly now, but I can tell you back in the day, he was not happy with Sean Taylor. There were plenty of other things that happened with Sean. A lot of off-the-field antics. A lot of on-the-field antics. He wasn't exactly the warmest individual with the media. The local media, even beat writers that travel with this football team. There were individuals that Jason Lockham-Fora tells stories about Sean Taylor back in the day when he was working the beat. did not exactly come off with the greatest of media receptions. So for those of you that want to sit back and take a look at all your Facebook feeds and all your YouTube feeds about the media coming out and talking about the wonderment of Sean Taylor, take it with a grain of salt, because not a lot of that was being said within the first 2 or 3 years of his existence as a Washington Redskin. It didn't happen. People loved to pile on the Washington Redskins bandwagon as far as pitching crap on this football team. It was easy to do. We were an easy target, and they loved to kick us when we were down. And picking up this rookie out of Miami who loved to get in trouble, loved to skip rookie symposiums. There were all kinds of rumors going around about him, unfounded rumors, walking around with a gun, getting in trouble with gangs, doing this, doing that, and the media loved it. The media ate it up. The only media that I can recall back in 2004 when we took this kid as a rookie on this football team that really opened their arms to Sean Taylor was the store-bought media, was the media that Daniel Snyder owned. You go to the Redskins.com video section and you would find, individuals on there talking about Sean Taylor and how wonderful this guy is, which when you got one narrative over here that's putting him in a positive light and everybody else that's talking about him in a negative one, which one are you going to go with? Only the Washington Redskin fan base, his first couple of years in the organization, really gave this kid a chance as far as rooting for him. I don't recall hardly anybody outside of the Redskins fan base that liked Sean Taylor. They thought he was a thug. They thought he was, somebody who was representative of everything that was negative about the streets, and he was representative of everything that was negative about Miami football at the time, which was easy to also dogpile onto. And for a guy that was always in the news media, whether he was taking a gun with him to get his ATVs back, whether he was getting pulled over for a DUI and getting bailed out, there were a lot of things not to like about Sean Taylor. Spitting at people and late hits on the football field, all these things were things that the media loved to highlight whenever they brought up these rookies, coming out of Miami, and Sean Taylor was an easy target to go after. And it was something that wouldn't shake him in his lifetime amongst us. And it wasn't until his first rookie season and his first second season on this football franchise that the Washington Redskin fan base started to see what the Miami fan base had been talking about this whole time. When you don't talk, when you don't open up yourself to the media, when you don't present yourself in a positive light, then you open up the narrative for the media to say whatever it is that they want about you. And that's what Sean did. Sean decided not to interact with the media. And the media doesn't like to be shunned. They don't like to not be talked to. If you don't talk to them, if you don't come out and say something, they're gonna come up with all kinds of negative press about you. Modern day, it's a modern day Marshawn Lynch. I'm only here so I don't get fined. How many people out there, how many positive media outlets did you see on Marshawn Lynch's venture with the Seattle Seahawks back in those days? Hardly any. There are a lot of people that love the dogpile on him. Sean was definitely one of those individuals. But that was the national media's easy focus on a negative narrative. I also recall this being the particular time in this particular era, 2005, 2006. This was the era when I first started to really discover the fan base, media base group, the niche that was the fans. When YouTube was in its infancy stage, there were vid makers that were around back then that loved Sean Taylor. I cannot think of one video maker that I had subscribed to back in the day, way before the BFG show was ever something that was considered a concept. There were individuals out there of channels that I have watched, and every single one of them loved Sean Taylor. I don't recall anybody saying negative things about him. We saw what it was that he did for us on the football field, and when you had individuals on our football team that were overpaid, individuals that came in here that were leaving with their paychecks, still leaving with contracts with this football team that were cut from the football team that were still paying, coaches that were coming and going like crazy, Greg Williams coming in here and was slowly starting to see as though he was starting to catch on, turning an upstart defense basically filled with nobodies. We didn't have really anybody on that football team. You take a look and you can see the names of the likes of LeVar Arrington on that football team. And I'm sorry, but LeVar was at the tail end of his career. He was not exactly an impact player. He definitely wasn't an every down defensive or outside linebacker for us at that particular time. That was just before he ended up jumping ship and going to New York. But Greg came in and was able to take an upstart defense, and actually we were starting to see a little bit of production. And then you take that upstart football team and you put an upstart superstar, a future superstar, and Sean Taylor in that backfield, and all of a sudden we started to see, wow, that there might be something here at the safety position. There might be something here to this defense. We get a couple more individuals on this football team, and we might actually have a top-flight defense. I was seeing Sean Taylor take out fullbacks. Running backs that were mowing people over were coming into Washington and getting tea-kettled. It was amazing to see, and all of a sudden that Redskin fan base started to really cling, no matter how much the media tried to push us away from the reputation that they were trying to build as Sean Taylor. The Washington Redskin fan base started to cling, probably unbeknownst to them, to number 36, who would eventually end up becoming number 21. I think right towards the tail end, the last 2 years when he was with us, the love for Sean Taylor was at an all-time high. That was when it became easier for the media to talk about what an awesome football player he was for us. We started to really see a little bit of a change in the national media, but you had a lot of people that were holding out that loved to still spin that narrative about him. When eventually we got the horrible news that he was in serious condition, that he had been shot at his home. You think about that. Think about that. Think about what you think Sean Taylor is, who you think Sean Taylor is, and to hear that he has been gunned down in his home, in his Florida Miami house. What do you think that the media is going to do with that? There were all kinds of rumors. I remember one of the big rumors at the time was that a gang affiliation who was associated with him in the past had put a hit out on him, showed up at his house, and gunned him down in front of his family. And it was rumored that it was execution style. Well, then all of a sudden the rumors, the media started coming out with the conditions of why he was in serious condition. And then they couldn't necessarily spin that narrative anymore. Well, then it was a stray bullet from a possible execution. There's all kinds of things that we don't necessarily hear about right now. Sean Taylor's past coming back to haunt him as he's gunned down in front of his family. At the time, I didn't care. I didn't care about any of that stuff. We had a guy who was down, a guy who was in serious condition, and they said he was clinging to life at that point. But when I had found out that the media reports had come out that a bullet had severed his femoral artery, I knew at that point in time his football career was officially over. We were done seeing Sean Taylor on a football field. You don't come back and play at a professional level after having your femoral artery severed. You'll be lucky. I don't know firsthand what it's like to go through something like that. I don't know what it's like firsthand, but I'm pretty sure there's an extensive recovery process. I'm pretty sure that you're not going to exactly walk correctly for the rest of your life. And I could pretty much stake my bottom dollar that you're not going to have a professional football career as somebody who relies on speed and agility and quickness with an injury like that, or a wound. It's not even an injury, it's a wound. I think when Sean died, out of respect for a life lost, that was the turning point in the media where we really started to see just who is this guy? We've heard all these rumors, and yet if you take a look at the body of work that he has left on planet Earth, is it really fitting the narrative that we've been spinning over the last couple of years? He just had a baby. He hasn't really been in serious trouble in the last couple of years, and if you talk to his fellow teammates, and if you talk to his coaches, we're kind of getting a different picture of exactly who Sean Taylor was. The fans knew who he was. The Miami Hurricanes knew who he was all along. The Miami community knew who he was all along. And the DMV started to realize who he was all along. And some of the biggest banner wavers for the Sean Taylor legacy starts with the fan base. I don't care what anybody says. It starts with the fan base. It is amazing to me how the media has tried, and I'll be dead honest about this, the media has tried to bury the Sean Taylor narrative for years. They have. But they can't deny the superstars that exist in the NFL today at that position that wear his number, that bear his likeness on as far as their play goes on the football field, that pay homage to him. They can't deny that. There are players like you see below that have played with him in college that waved his banner and admired him from afar. I remember ESPN did a really short piece on Sean Taylor, and it was wildly popular. In my opinion, that was what sparked the Football Life presentation that the NFL Films ended up doing on him. Without that short, it was probably, what, a 10-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute ESPN spot on Sean Taylor. That was really, as far as I'm concerned, the only attention that ESPN was willing to throw his way. But it wasn't until the attention that they got after that spot they realized, but there's actually a story here. There's actually a fan base out. We're getting so many clicks and so much, attention and so many eyes on this particular aspect of Washington Redskin football and who this individual is. We might have to do something bigger here. And I think that's what sparked that documentary. And it sparked things that have come after that. This 10-year anniversary is one of them. Now, I can't even scroll down my page on Facebook. I can't even scroll down YouTube without seeing some sort of tribute by a major television conglomerate talking about the bewilderment of Sean Taylor, remembering Sean Taylor. 10 years ago today, Sean Taylor. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. It pisses me off. It pisses me off. What the hell do these guys remember about Sean Taylor? Really? Without singing the praise and getting the attention of the fan base. That's all you're doing. You want to know who the people are that remember Sean Taylor? You take a look at who it was that was in those stands after he had passed away, that were waving his flags, that were waving his number. The people that don't like talking about him because it hurts too much to talk about. The people who even still to this day get emotional thinking about it. There's still people to this day that can't think about him, that can't talk about him without getting emotional. I'm talking about crying. I'm talking about pain. I still feel it to this day. The short amount of time in which he was here, burning the candle on both ends, the life and the memory of a man who played a position that, honestly, I'm going to go. I'm going to check out of this world sooner or later. And in my lifetime, I would have never have seen anybody to come along to upstart the memory of a Sean Taylor with their football play at that position. I don't think it will ever happen. I feel sorry for anybody who comes into this football franchise who is a safety. The safeties that we have right now on this football field have a huge task ahead of them because they are living in the shadow of an individual that will constantly be compared to. DJ Swearinger is a living embodiment of an individual who is playing on the same football field, who gets dressed and watches film and is in the organization that brought Sean Taylor to prominence in the NFL. And he's loving every minute of it. I find him to be a breath of fresh air to a certain extent. But DJ Swearinger knows. You can tell when he talks about it. He knows that this is still a painful subject for a lot of people to talk about. And he talks about it with a profound amount of reverence and respect, and I like that about him. My first Redskin game, my first Redskin home game, the first time I walked through that tunnel, the first time I walked out into those stands, the first time I saw that football field, the first time I caught those, I caught the sights and the smells and the atmosphere and the exuberance, the euphoria that I felt to finally see a home game, to see that football field. The one thing that I needed to see, the trek that I needed to make, personally, the presence that I had to be in, was to see that banner on that Ring of Fame, to see his name. And there are a lot of greats on that banner, man. There's a lot of football greats that have played for this organization who have their names up there. One of my heroes is up there. Doug Williams is up there. But as a YouTuber, as a Redskins fan, as a former safety, and an admirer of who Sean Taylor was, I had to see that banner. "10 years ago, we're at the 10-year anniversary, and still it's tough. I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank you guys for tuning into my channel. Leave your comments and opinions down below. Let me know how it is that you think. Let me know some of your favorite moments and your favorite memories of Sean Taylor. Tell me what it is that you liked about him when he played. Tell me what it is that you remember how old you were when you first started to become a fan. Like I said, I go back a long way. I remember what this team was like before him. But this video has been dedicated to the memory of Sean Taylor. A memory that will not go far. A memory that I will have for the rest of my life. And one that I would have to say I'm proud as a Redskin fan to actually say that I remember the Sean Taylor era. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and remember, us fans, the twin feather, we ride together. Redskins for life. Peace out. We will catch you all next time. And I'm going to play now a video tribute to him. I don't know who the author is. I got it from years ago, but every once in a while I like to watch this video. I'll let you guys watch it now. We'll catch you next time.
You can't be scared of death. When it's that time and it comes, I mean, it comes. I mean, majority of the people that get a chance to live a long time, they kind of, that's what they look forward to on the last couple of days. I mean, you never see a person who has lived their life to the fullest. You know, they sometimes feel sorry for like a child maybe that didn't get the chance to do some of the things that they thought that child might have had a chance to do in life. But I mean, I've been blessed, and God's looked out for me, so I'm happy.